In Jesus' name, amen. All right, students, this week, if you notice on the syllabus, I'm not really making you guys do a lot of work in this class of like a lot of assignments like we were doing for a while there, right? So everybody kind of happy with that? Mm-hmm. It's been kind of smooth sailing, right?
It's kind of a lot of reading, though.
But it's a lot of reading. Okay? So I'm asking you to get in and do the reading on some of these things, and I need you to take that serious. Because I'm not having you do a lot of accountability in terms of like I'm giving you a quiz every week and a pop quiz and all that to hold you accountable. But I do need you to be doing the reading because I'm saving you from a very tedious textbook. Does everybody understand that? That we've used in this class before. Not that it's bad, and I don't want to put it down. It's a helpful textbook, but it's very tedious. And I've been concerned that sometimes when at least my kids have used it, they said, yes, but I kind of forgot it because it was so tedious, I couldn't get the big picture. So when I ask you to do the reading, you need to attend to that. We'll be interacting with this material, meaning I'll assume you got it. So I'm only giving you the high points in class. If you notice, we're not able to go through all the details in here for these different worldviews. So you need to get into the website that I give you the links on and read what I ask you to read. Does that make sense? Now, having said that, this week we're going on to a new worldview. If you were not here last week, you need to watch that video. Remember, if you miss a class, you're responsible to make sure you watch the video. You can't have any excuse in this class because they're always recorded, and you can always access them, through our link. So last week we were talking about which worldview? Marxism, Leninism. All right, now, having studied a little bit more about that, do you feel like that you're able to recognize those worldview tendencies when you encounter them in the news? Are you guys watching the news at all? How many people are watching the news? Okay, watching the news some? Now, it's like a good news, bad news. I don't want you to become news groupies, okay, where you're like addicted to the news. But if we're not aware of the current events, that's part of what this class is about, because this is a current events class. So you need to be tapping in to where when I say we had a terrorist attack in Canada, you have some recognition that happened. How many of you have a recognition that we had a terrorist attack in Canada? Okay, good. You did listen to the news. Some.
It wasn't the news, it was a friend.
Okay, a friend told you. Okay, well I guess that's news by word of grapevine, okay? So I'd like for you guys to do some looking at a news service. I'll let you do that however you want to. Newspaper, you can access it online. We need to, as we go through the course of this year, develop a discernment for the different types of news. Last week I showed you an off the beaten path news source that I had a magazine for. I'm smart lady enough to realize that I need to vet my news. What does the word vet mean? We know what that word is? It's a word in this modern day you need to know. It's a kind of a new word for me. Vet, V-E-T. Not a veteran and not a veterinarian, okay? The word is vet. Vet means that you need to learn to check news sources. Find out if they're reliable. Did you know that everything online, just because it's online and published, does not mean it's all true? In fact, I had somebody publish something this week about me online, and it was spectacularly not true. Spectacularly. I mean, they were saying, and I was doing stuff, and I'm like, wow, I lived then, and I didn't even know that about me. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So it's a good example for me to recognize that people can put anything online that they want to, and so the people who are reading that this week can all just decide, Now, I'm hoping they'll vet their news, okay? Hoping they'll vet it, meaning they'll check the sources. They'll ask themselves, who wrote this? For what purpose? Were they in a position to know what they're writing about? I can tell you, this person that wrote about me this week, I've never met. He's never seen our family, and he was spectacularly, inferring data that was really kind of funny at times. Would you say, Micah? I mean, some of this can...
He clearly didn't know our family.
It was just like, whoa. But it's a good, we've learned from that. God bless him. Let's just hope he gets saved through the whole thing. Maybe he'll read my books enough that suddenly he'll want to come and to call me. But the interesting thing is he didn't call me. So if you're writing to do a news story on somebody, then you should be doing what's called first source analysis, right? We've talked about that in research. It's not appropriate to take second source analysis. You need to be willing to go in and say, okay, let's check my facts. So vetting our news sources is going to be very important. Let's talk about where you could get your news from, because I want you to begin to do that. And again, I'm not asking you to spend a lot of time on this. I want your awareness to go up. So where are some of the places you could get your news? Fox News. CNN. Okay, now if I say Fox, what do we think with Fox? Conservative. Okay, conservative viewpoint. Okay, is everything on Fox 100% right?
No.
Probably not. No. Will it more line up with my leanings? Yeah. So I'll kind of like it better, won't I? But you know what? I usually, when I read it on Fox, a lot of times I'll go right on over and read it on CNN. Because I want to see what else somebody might be saying, because I'm even going to vet Fox. Now, I don't do it all the time, and I'm guilty of just looking at one place, but in this modern world, we need to make sure that we listen to the full story. Because what does the scripture say? The first one comes along as a witness, and it sounds good until the second one comes along. That's in this Proverbs. Somebody can look that up for me. And, I've learned about that just being in my house. Somebody comes to tattle, and they give me the story, and I'm ready to go in and just say, okay, what's going on here? I'm not going to hit anybody, by the way. I just slammed my fist. But I'm ready now. I'm going to solve this problem. And all of a sudden, I hear the rest of the story, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I won't do anything. And I just leave, because I only heard half the story. So a proper news source will have a journalistic mindset. What is journalism?
Writings about...
It is writing in the third person based on the facts. It is not opinion-based. When you have something called an op-ed or opinion, some people call them, you'll see in a column or in a news source, it'll give you, like on Fox News, you have some that are their journalists reporting the facts, and then you'll have some where it'll say Joe Smith op-ed. Do you know what that phrase means? It's an opinion editorial. So you need to know what you're reading. You need to know whether somebody is putting on their journalism hat to go out and observe and report it to you, which we all know still can have a bias to it, because you're going to interpret the data based on your own worldview. But certainly if it says op-ed on it, then you need to constantly be saying, now wait a minute, who's writing this and for what purpose, where are they coming from? Does that make sense? So you could do the online news services. I know Matthew, you said you read something interesting. You showed me a story last night on CBS News that you had clicked over to see what was on there. And they were telling a very interesting story about a teenager again. A teenager who had been, this time, how was he taken into ISIS? How was he taken in?
Either go with ISIS or be beheaded.
Yeah. Kind of like, I'd say that's strong arming, would you say? Either come with us or be beheaded. So what did this guy decide? He was 15.
Just go with him.
Go with them and participate as the way they say to do it. Even though he'd been mistreated, even though they'd even drugged him, he knew all this stuff. So now his brain had been taken over. Poor young man. Father, we pray for that 15-year-old that's been taken captive. And Lord, we can see in the outside how he's in bondage, but Lord, sometimes we can be taken over to ideas and not even know it. In Jesus' name. So when you read the news with an interest and with an intercession hat on. What do I mean by that? You read the news, everybody look up here now, go to attentiveness. You read the news with a I want to know the news, but you also wear it with an intercession hat on. What's that mean?
Well, you don't want to just look at all the information, not as gossip, but just for you to know, instead of doing something about it and taking it to God.
Right, taking it to God. And prayer can be very quick. You don't have to sit and go into a major prayer meeting on every news story and never get anywhere. But that young man last night, that touched my heart. That's somebody's 15-year-old son. I have a 15-year-old. I'm looking at Matthew, and I'm thinking, somebody came and did that and scared him to that point. That is unfair. Now, I read this story about the teenagers who are voluntarily joining up with ISIS. I remembered Kaylin, when she was just totally goofed up and vulnerable to somebody pulling her along into a weird idea. That's somebody's daughter over there. That, they wake up one day and find out teenagers have always done kooky things. They ran away or they did this. How'd you like to wake up and find your daughter joined ISIS? I mean, that kind of takes it to a new level, doesn't it? A runaway case. So we need to have an eye of compassion and intercession. Okay, we did Marxist-Leninism. Lots of good things in the news that you can read about that. You'll see that. This week we're on one that is called secular humanism. Who can define that for us? What is secular humanism?
Basically, the pursuit of happiness for man and just living life to the fullest. with
Okay.
no
Okay.
boundaries of religion.
Okay, and where did secular humanism come from? Yes?
I'm gonna answer the first question.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, yeah, we were still on that when you raised your hand. That's good.
They worship human and the human idea and
Yes.
like whatever, the greater good for human beings, not for anything else. That's what
Right.
they're-
That's what a humanistic view. You get the clue right from the word there that human is the end of all things. It's the beginning and the end of all things. And so, yeah. And so when you look at humanism, the secular worldview is a religious worldview. Now, we need to understand that. This one, just like Islam, you can look at it from a worldview lens, meaning what are the ideologies, what are the philosophies, but you can also say it's an organized religion. Is there a church in town called First Secular Humanist on Grand Avenue or something? I mean, do you go to church? But the interesting thing is that though it is not really an organized religion, it is protected like a religion. And so it's very interesting. There are actually organized people that call themselves secular humanists, and they're nonprofits. Okay? They're protected because they consider that their religious point of view. Just like atheists. Are atheists religious?
Yeah.
Well,
Trick
they're
question.
religious, but they say they're not.
Absolutely they are. Absolutely. See, that's an you cannot be an atheist and opt out of saying that I'm believing something. You see what I mean? So you can have and can you be a Satanist and be religious? Yeah, you can be religious Satanist. Okay? So you have some people who are into secular humanism and they've taken it to the extreme. Okay? They have literally sat around and talked about this thing and said, okay, let's write up a document about what we believe. But then the dominant way that we secular humanism is that it became adopted into the American culture and into the Western world. So it's a soft worldview. It's very, very common. Islam as a worldview in the United States is a very small minority, correct?
Mhm.
But secular humanism as a worldview in the United States, how big is it?
It's a minority.
No, it's huge.
It's a majority.
It's probably, I would have to say, and I can't prove this, so you're just, secular humanism is what I was trained on. I went to church on Sunday, but I went to school 5 days a week with a secular humanist worldview. So my worldview was secular humanist until I encountered God and had to get my worldview straightened out. So when I was in my open quest, most of open leans towards secular humanism. It may not be totally identified there, but that's what the worldview is. That's what I put first. Remember I told you, I put what I learned in my science, what I learned about thought from what was going on in school. I put that at the bottom and then added my Bible on top. Okay, so I tried to merge the two, but really I was operating mostly out of a secular humanist point of view. Okay, let's look over here. Mankind at the center. Man is the measure is a phrase that they use quite a bit. In the secular theology, what is the secular theology of a secular humanist? If you look here on yours. Atheism, meaning they're not going to identify an external God. What's the philosophy going to be?
Naturalism.
Naturalism. It says that only matter exists, things that you can see, feel, and study. So they're not going to identify a spirit realm at all in operation. If you're a secular humanist, what you see under your microscope, what you see with what you can prove, what you can touch, what are in the sense realm of mankind. Now, of course, for a secular humanist who was talking about secular humanism in the early 1900s, we didn't even have the atomic microscope, So the scientific world exploded and we began to see more and more things, but they never move over to the spirit realm. So even though their physical realm would continue to get more revelation, you're not going to move over into a spirit realm with a true secular humanist. Would you say that a lot of our professors at SIU, after studying this, would you say a lot of them are secular humanists? Yes?
There was actually a professor that has his name down under the Humanist Manifesto Part 2.
Yes.
He's on there saying that he encourages it.
Right.
He's the professor from SIU. I don't know when it was written, but there's only like a couple on there that are like nationally known. And it's
Right.
from SIU.
One from SIU, one from our university. Yes, I noticed that when I read that too, which is pretty startling. to say you have a founding member of the Humanist Manifesto that came through our school. So, when you go to SIU, every university will have something called their core curriculum. Their core curriculum will reflect their worldview. So if you go, name a conservative Christian school that you might know, that you've known some friends that have gone to.
Trinity.
Okay, I'm talking about a college.
Yeah, well, no,
Trinity,
not
Trinity
Trinity
Bible.
High School.
Okay,
yeah.
Trinity Bible. Okay, do you know anything about what they took in their freshman and sophomore year? What kind of classes? Did they take any Bible classes?
You have to take, Bible, theology, that kind of thing.
Okay, Bible and theology. Okay, now, if you go to SIU, then you're going to take core curriculum, and it's going to train you in that university's worldview system. Okay, so if you go over and you look, it's very educational. In fact, I'm going to give this to you as an assignment this week. Okay, you ready? I want you to go to the SIU website. Okay, I want you to go to the SIU website, and I want you to read through the core curriculum requirements. Okay, what's called the university requirements. I want you to read through the course list and find out what requirements you would have to take in order to just do what you call your basics at SIU, particularly in the area of humanities and science, and I want you to read the course description. And then I want you to be able to come back and tell me which one of these worldviews does it appear to be leaning toward, because every university will have to have some sort of a way they make a decision. Okay? That school made a decision, we want your university studies to be Bible-based. Well, what's the equivalent over at SIU? So I want you to be able to be aware of that, because you know they're going to have some. Okay, so let's look over here now. Under secular humanism, you have moral relativism. What is moral relativism?
It's morality is relevant to the person that they're talking about. So you have your morals, he has his morals, but they don't have to agree.
Human beings get to decide the standards and values. Okay, so basically, every group of human beings gets to set what they believe is right or wrong. Each person has a different background and reasoning, therefore the standards and values and ethics are relative. Humanist Manifesto 2 states this: we affirm that moral values derive their source from human experience. Ethics is autonomous and situational, needing not theological or ideological sanction. Ethics stems from human need and interest. Okay? Now, when I was in college, and I went to SIU Carbondale, but I got most of my degree done at SIU Edwardsville. One of the classes I took was an ethics class. It was on a kind of a required list because I was in the nursing department. And so I went to this ethics class, and I was trained through the public school system of education in America. So when we went to the class, and I think the one I'm thinking about now is my philosophy. It was like philosophy of ethics, I think is what it was. So I remember we studied philosophy, but here's how we did it. The professor had us read these things, kind of like I'm having you do. We read documents, and then we came to class, and we said, okay, now Keenan, what do you think is right? And then Keenan, at age 19, would sit and tell us what he thought was right. Okay, now Micah, what do you think is right? And so, Micah over here at age 20 is going to tell us what he's right. And then we'd go over here, now Danae, what do you think? Which of these do you like? Okay? And that's how we ran the whole class for the entire semester. We all just kind of and so we'd have some people say, well, I really like this guy over here. I really think this moral is right. I think this moral is right. And the whole premise of our education was we could all figure that out. How effective do you think that was? A group of 18, 19, 20-year-olds reading philosophy from, the ages and then voting on which ones we liked. But, what deep was inside of me, I look back on that and I think, why did I not think that was odd? Don't you think that would be kind of odd? Wouldn't you kind of be waiting to say, Professor, could you just tell us which of these is right? But you know what? I remember. That never occurred to me. I remember, because I've thought about that later. Because I was trained for secular humanism. Do you see how that works? So that didn't even bother me. I just paid my money, went to class, thought that's what it was supposed to be like. That's the education system. Why would that be the education system in America? Somebody tell me. Had you read the Human Manifesto, why would that be our thought process of how we would do this? Yes?
They don't want to feel accountable to any set of rules and feel guilt or anything like that.
Okay. And who was the inventor of the modern education movement in America? Anybody catch that? That's one reason why I had you read those manifestos. Anybody catch that connection?
John Dewey.
John Dewey. He's called the founder of public and modern education in America. Isn't that interesting? So,
Did he sign the manifesto?
Yeah. he was the original writer of the manifesto. So the light bulb's going on here. So not only was the content questionable in terms of what we were doing, but even the method of how we were doing it lined up with the worldview that it would be a good education system to line all the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds up and let them all discover their own philosophy. And I remember he was like, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I remember that thinking, okay, well, I guess it's all good. I mean, that was kind of my conclusion. Now, I had some morals on the inside of me because I had been to church and I love God. So I remember thinking, no, I don't agree with that one. But you know what? I kind of thought it was okay that he agreed with that one because my mind was all caught up in this. So this is where you're going to have to be able to hold your own, see, in education, because you're going to get into classes, so you're going to raise your hand, and most of you have not been trained in this philosophy, so you're going to be assuming that you're going to come into a classroom setting and raise your hand, and you're going to speak the truth, and the truth will somehow affect somebody. So you see what I'm saying? Because that's kind of our posture here as Christians, right? We're all here to get the truth. But what if you have a system where that's not really what you believe down at the core? Then are you looking for truth? No.
Because they've already found truth.
Well, yeah, because the whole worldview won't support that. You see why this is so dangerous? Folks, that's just why we have the 1%. We're down in a system, and that's why it's so hard. I'm not saying you can't go to a public school system in America and come out as a believer. Of course you can. God can do amazing things, but I'm saying, wow, even the way we're doing it makes it really hard because it's hard to have that ability to fish through that at a young age. Do you see what I mean? Okay, so here we are now in secular humanism, moral relativism. Let's go over here to this word biology. Boy, some of you are really good now with your biology. Can anybody explain neo-Darwinian evolution? Can somebody explain that for us? Who's got that one? Got it? I knew you could. I knew we had the science guy over here. What is neo-Darwinian evolution? Can you explain it?
Neo-Darwinian.
And so if you notice on our chart here, they've got different, if you look now to the right on our chart, because remember we're looking at this worldview comparative chart that you can download for free at Summit Ministries. So it's a chart that we're using as the foundation now to look at these worldviews. If you look over here, there's something on the next chart over on cosmic humanism that we haven't looked at yet. They're going to have cosmic evolution, and then postmodernism is into punctuated evolution. So whenever you just throw out the idea that, well, I'm into evolution, there's a lot of variation of what form of evolution that people can be into, right? Neo-Darwinian is more the traditional evolution that comes from Darwin, but many evolutionists do not think Darwin was right. Y'all familiar with that? I mean, there's a lot of what we call the more modern, the postmodern people. So if you come in and you say, oh, well, I'm not into Darwin stuff, then they'll look back and say, well, I'm not either, okay? Because they have another form of evolution. So, and you're doing a good job of explaining it there. Neo-Darwin supports that natural selection acts on genetic variations within individuals and populations, and that mutations, especially random copying errors in the DNA, provide the main source of these variations. It'll be a slow, gradual process. Without naturalistic evolution, there is no secular worldview. Now, the secular humanists believe that science has proven the theory of evolution to the extent that it is no longer theory, but it is scientific fact. Okay? So they're not just saying we think this, they've put it at the foundation. So when you talk to someone in the Humanist Manifesto, when you read the Humanist Manifesto, you have to understand that they are deeply believing that man is progressing. So their thought process is not just that science is progressing, but they believe, Danae, you are literally progressing over your grandmother. Your moral conscience development, we can trust you more than grandma's generation. Okay, now hang on. What is that going to do?
Put children
Gonna make more
above.
people wear modern clothes.
It's going to say, you're going to constantly say, now that's what's going on in our culture right now, because new and improved appears to be what the millennial generation is pushing for. We're throwing off the shackles of grandma's old stuff back there. Okay? So what's going on with that? Even though you could say, well, some of grandma's ideas were tried and true and they worked. If we have thoughts right now, by very design, since we're on the progress of mankind, we know at the philosophical level that what man is doing now is superior to what man was doing. Do you see how that works? Yeah, go ahead.
They've just confused science and religion. Like, we have our science. It made this technological stuff we have now that really is better than anything we've ever made before. And
Right.
so they think that what we believe now is also better.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what you need to understand. It's so deep down in the worldview that when you start saying, well, yeah, that's not how it used to be, then somebody who's in this viewpoint is automatically just saying, well, that's crazy. Why would you want to do it how it used to be?
Yeah.
We all know that man is evolving. Okay, man is evolving, and so newer is better. Modern ideas of what to do about homosexuality obviously are superior. So you throw out historical, it negates history. You see what it does? And it elevates the sciences. Now, think about that. What's happening in the educational push in our world right now? Where does everybody want us to go study? Science. Where's the money? Science. You go out and get a history major, you might starve, right? Because nobody wants a history major. In fact, Hannah, who just is very gifted in history, she has an ability like I've never met anybody who could read a history book and then tell you about it. Like Keenan over here, we always turn to him whenever we need a science question, because we know he'll read the science book and the rest of us are like, okay, what was that? And we're trying to highlight it, but his brain is designed to grab it. Now, God designed some people like that, and that's a gifting that he has. He designed some people where they grab on, my brain grabs onto this philosophy stuff. Okay, this is just how my brain is designed since I was a little kid. So you're all being over here saying, well, how does she know all this? Well, when I read this stuff, man, it just gets in me, and I'm designed that way. Now, I studied science, and I made A's in science, but I worked at it. And I can't tell you any of that. I didn't retain it. History and the study of history has been totally cut out of many education systems in America now. Did you know we replaced it with this new word? Social science. Interesting. Do you see how this all goes together? Social studies. We're going to study social studies. So in fact, when I've tried to write up the coursework, if you put what is in a college prep course of study now to get into a college, how many years of science do they want you to have? 3 to 4. 3 to 4 years of science. Most will now say you need at least 3, a lot of times pushing toward 4. Now I can tell you when I first college prepped Nathan, it was 2 to 3. So that's upped in the recommendation in the last few years. But you know how many history courses you need to go to college? You just need something called social studies. You may never have had a history course because there's so many things that they'll throw in under that. So you need a couple of social studies electives. So we don't put requirements on that. Now why would that be? Think about it. Back in Greek and Roman education, what were they studying? History, strategy.
Yeah.
They could recite everything, in terms art of war. Yeah, they were studying all that stuff, but they had an appreciation. How did they study? They studied history. Okay, when God brought His children of Israel forward, the whole Old Testament is a history study. So why does the modern Christian think that we can just dump out on the Old Testament? Now I have Christians say, "Oh yeah, well it's just in the Old Testament. I don't even know that." And I'm like, if you don't know your history, how are you going to know how to read the New Testament? You have to know the difference between the Old and the New Testament, but what we don't have is appreciation for is history. That's because of humanism. Guys, you just need to understand that. That is a modern idea. That's not how America was founded. America was founded strong on understanding of history and on this stuff, but we shifted because of humanism. You see what I mean? So even people who are probably your grandparents, it would be almost like your great-grandparents, okay? Because it's really my grandparents. Their view and their knowledge of history I always thought was kind of crazy that they knew a lot more about history than I did. Now I could tell them all about science, they had no idea about science, but they valued history. So, what's the old phrase about history? Anybody know?
If you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat history.
Right. Don't know your history, bound to repeat it. Okay, let's keep going down here. Where were we? Psychology. This one's exciting. Self-actualization. Every college course just about that I took in college, and I should have brought my board in here, I didn't. We drew...
You want me to go find one?
Yeah, go get me a board. That would be really good. I have my marker over there. We drew a little diagram at the beginning of every class. I'm talking about my science classes. I'm talking about my social science classes. I'm talking about my nursing because I told you I had a background in nursing. So that means I had a blend of both science and psychology, because when you're going to go do nursing, you're going to have to be thinking scientifically, but you also have to know how to help the whole person. So that's where I studied a lot. I have to tell you, every class I went to, they drew something on the board. And I just thought, in fact, I would ask Doug about this, and he'd say, oh yeah, well, I saw that a couple times. But I'm looking at it and saying, well, why is it I see it on every single class I go to? I have to go through and do it. And so we'll see if she can bring it in here. But it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay? You mind who Maslow is? Maslow? Okay, write his name down here. Abraham Maslow. He was a psychologist with a theorist, and he was a humanist. It's kind of blue. Boy, that's kind of blue. It's kind of blue, isn't it? Okay, let's grab a marker here. And it looks like we didn't quite get in here with our cleaner on it, but let's see if I can do this, because I really want to be able to show you this guy. And I suggest, if you're watching this online, that you go and look at this guy's study, because it explains a lot about how we think about our goals. So here's what I'm going to do on my very blue board. I'm going to draw a triangle here. Oh no, blue board and weak marker. This is not going to work.
No. Whoops, there it goes.
Falling board. Okay, Micah, come help me. You're going to need to help me here. Okay, I have here a triangle, a big, giant triangle. Okay? Now, a triangle, according to Maslow, he has levels to his triangle. Okay? His levels are how he views humankind. He views that every human being has needs. It's called Maslow's hierarchy. What's hierarchy means? Hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Somebody tell me what a hierarchy is.
It's like it's a chart or a list with the genus and species kind of deal, where you have the parents and you have the children of those things.
Okay, that's a genealogy, but it's kind of like a hierarchy.
Parents not meaning like family parents.
Oh, family members, okay. A hierarchy is meaning that something is progressing and there's a higher order and then it has a time to it. So Maslow's hierarchy, he said it like this. And you might find little variations and you look at the chart. It's real easy. I just pulled a chart up right here. Down here, he says that the basic view of man is your physiological needs. Okay, what are your physiological needs? Your physiology.
You need food to
Food,
survive.
water, shelter. Okay, those basic three needs they tell you all need. Okay, so your physical needs. People, first off, need their physical needs met. How many of you say that's true? Because if you don't have that, that's like at the basis here. Okay, the basis is physical. Up from that is this need that he calls safety. A safety need. A safety need. Up from that is one that he calls love and belonging. Belonging. To be loved and to feel a sense of belonging. Up from that is something called esteem. Uh-oh. Are you hearing some buzzwords now? Esteem. We think of esteem. What's the word that we hear in our culture a great deal? Self-esteem. Okay, it came from this. Okay, esteem. The highest need is something called self-actualization. Okay, now let me teach you just a little bit about this, because this is at the core worldview of secular humanism, and I have to tell you, it's at the core viewpoint of most people who are are teaching in social sciences still in America today. It's still a very popular idea. And you know what? A lot of this I could even agree with, because it makes good common sense. Makes good common sense. Down here, the first need that a person has, we're here at a Dream Center. Okay, we're here at a Dream Center. We deal with people who come in dire needs. Okay? We meet the first level of need that they have. If somebody is hungry, cold, and doesn't have any water, then what good is it going to do to hug them and say, we think you're a great person? You see what I'm saying? What's their first need? Please, can you use some food? I'm starving over here, okay? So what they're saying is that this is a hierarchy. Up from that, they need a safe place to stay. If you're living in an ISIS country right now, first you were a refugee, then the first thing you want to do is get the refugees some water, because they only got 3 days to live, right? They don't have any water, they're dead. Then you need to get them over there separated so that they can live I just was reading some story of this over in Iraq, of somebody who's running a Christian refugee camp. And so they're trying to get the people some food and water, because they say literally got people starving. They're out of their house, they have nothing to eat, they have no clean water. Then they get them into these refugee camps and make them safe so that the ISIS people are not beheading them. How do you think that's a good idea? Okay, you need safety. Up from that, belonging and love. Every human being, did you know that if you put a baby and you even feed them, but you put them in a crib, but you give them no human contact, that they will die? Proven study in orphanages. Some horrible studies where children were not, they just said, we don't have time for this. We got too many people in these orphanages. They just gave them their bottles, left them in a crib, and they found babies dying. Because God wired us with a love need and a need for belonging. So is that true? Okay? So, this here thing makes sense. Here's where the chart really gets interesting, though. Because you always have to know what's at the top of the chart. Okay? Is the goal of Lisa Cherry's life to be self-actualized? Self-actualized means self-fulfilled and meeting my highest potential. Is that the goal of Lisa Cherry's life? Trick question. Okay? Does this represent a worldview? It's at the core of the worldview. See, the highest goal in this worldview is this thing called self-actualization. You have your self-rights and your process of self-development. Now, as a believer with a biblical worldview, is this at the top of our hierarchy? Micah?
No.
Okay, well, what's at the top?
To serve Jesus.
Yeah, the top of this, you could use different phrases, but the top of this would be to fulfill your God destiny, whatever that is, whatever He's called you to be His child, and to fulfill His calling upon your life, His assignment, His purpose. You get lots of different words. Now, can you see how this is kind of a near miss? But it's not a near miss, it's like 100 miles away. Okay? Now, underneath that, now wait a minute. If I'm a believer, should I be trying to achieve my self-esteem? What should I be looking for? Galatians 2:20. Watch this. Galatians 2:20. See, Galatians 2:20, who knows it? I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who lived, but it's Christ who lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself up for me. So is my whole need system supposed to be based on self-esteem or on my identification in Christ? Jesus' esteem. Do you see the difference here? Now, here's the problem. You got Christian kids, they've been to church, they know those scriptures, they know we're here to serve Jesus, they've been to the concerts, they're doing all this stuff, but deep inside, this is what they've been taught. So now they build a selfish form of Christianity, like a hybrid, kind of like a secular God sort of a thing. See what I mean? They mix secular humanism with their God, but at the top of their chart, they don't have God. They don't have a crucified life in Christ. They have self-actualization. So take that back to our book, The God of Me. Well, do you see where we get it? See, we're being trained in this. So, I was so steeped in this, I could write this little chart out by memory. It was on everybody's test. I had it drilled into me. And this is a picture of what secular humanism is. It's the ultimate goal. So because of that, the rights, see this word self? The rights of the individual are elevated. So now we have all the rights movements, the modern rights movements that came as a result of this. What kind of rights? Women's rights. We have the civil rights. Now we're moved to a new form called the gay rights or gender rights or whatever you want to call it. But it's all, see, and that doesn't mean that we don't want to truly, but it should, all of those rights have to be filtered through this. You see what I mean? If not, you're just over here building a bunch of really, really strong deceived people. Which is what we're doing. Does that make sense? So, God's into loving us. He wants us to be self-actualized. Here's how I'm going to get, so I was off in my careerism view. I'm going to get self-actualized. I'm going to do all these things. Until all of a sudden I had a collision with God. And I had to say, oh, wait. You mean that's not the goal? I thought that was the goal. No, my goal is this. I want to fulfill. I'm only going to be here for a few more years. You say, oh, is she dying soon? No. Do you realize how few years we get on the earth? I mean, are you beginning to see that, Susan? I mean, it didn't take long to live this thing up. Just a few years that we're going to be here. So the question is going to become for you individually. Are you going to buy into secular humanism? And you're going to put this at the top of your chart. So therefore, you're going to make all your career decisions based on that. You're going to make all your family decisions based on that. You're going to make all your selections in life because you're trying to get self-actualized. Or you're going to go over here to the biblical worldview. Do you see? See how that works? Okay, that was kind of a long one. But I think this one was so steeped in me. And when it was like a light bulb went on, I remember, it was when I was really coming out of this open stuff. And I said, Doug, I've been a Maslowite. I've spent my whole life trying to figure out how to make myself self-actualized, and I got to change. So I just said to myself, I'm going to learn from this because we can learn something from this. This helps me to minister to people now. I just realized, look, if I've got somebody and I'm trying to talk about, hey, let's help you with your future, and let's help you make these great life plans. But you know what? They are so broken, and they feel so alone. Their family is so torn up. And they don't have their love needs. That's the problem in your generation too. So damaged. They can't go up here and get self-actualized. They're way down here. They got to get their needs met. But you know what? I can't fix their family. Can you? Some families are just so broken you can't fix them. I'm telling you, they're just so goofed up. So you know what? The good news is, where does God come in here? Can He meet these needs? Yeah. So again, if you put God at the top here, then all of a sudden this chart makes sense. You see what I mean? All of a sudden you realize, okay, now I get this. We put God up here, then He'll meet my love needs. He'll meet my needs to feel good about myself. That make sense? Okay. All right, let's go on here now. What's our next one on here? Lost my place here. Okay. Self-actualization. Next we have non-traditional family, church, and state. Okay. Who read something about that and thinks they can explain that one? Non-traditional church, family, and state. Got it? Who can do that one?
Well, I can
Give me a whack at it. What do you think?
Well, traditional is husband, wife, child.
Right.
But non-traditional is probably whatever you want it to be. So, guy, girl,
Anything else?
adopted
Yeah.
kid, grandma that's not related or something. Just whatever you want it to be.
Sure, and in fact, as we evolve in our understanding of family, see? I mean, we're progressing. Notice these buzzwords. Progressivism. Now that's another one I even checked this recently. You can Google up the word progressivism. Progressivism is actually a doctrinal belief system that you can find. It's a cousin to Marxism-Leninism, but it's also over here. That's where these things all interact because we're on a road to superior. We're up here. We're all going to get self-actualized. So since I can invent a new kind of family, and I can invent a new kind of society. I can change societal rules. I can make it better. What's that sound like? Because this is another concept, another word you probably ought to know. It's the concept of utopia. Okay, what's a utopia? U-T-O-P-I-A. What's utopia? Yes?
It's a perfect situation.
Yes.
Nothing wrong.
Okay, you know what? I don't have a single problem with utopia. Do you guys? How do you get utopia?
Done.
Okay, you're right. How do we get utopia? Go to heaven. See, this whole concept. Some people say, oh, there's no utopia. And I'm like, well, of course there is. It's called heaven. It's all in how you're going to define utopia. But in the secular humanist point of view, what is utopia? It's when you build something that evolves in your culture, and when you build kind of a new way of thinking and a new kind of family. So now you've got this show that's called Modern Family, right? Now, I never watched it. You don't have to tell me whether you ever watched it, but I do know what they did is they threw in every kind of kinky, odd relationship to show that the modern family is breaking through all barriers. Now, that's a direct understanding. It's just the next generation. See, my generation embraced this. The next generation doesn't know there's an issue. Remember how I taught you that? What one generation experiments with, the next generation adopts, and the next generation doesn't know there's an issue. Okay, so now we can just, because we're along now several generations, we can just invent our own. Write our own rule book. You don't have to have any kind of like saying what's good or bad. Now, here's the interesting thing is, remember now what's their highest, in this belief system, what is the highest way to determine right and wrong?
How you feel.
Feeling, but not, now there's something that's even elevated above feeling in this system. Science. Science. Human experience, but somehow science is God. So this is where this one really comes into conflict. Because remember, they don't believe in supernatural. This belief does not count in like a God experience, but it elevates science. So this is where you just almost, you just want to scream sometimes because you're looking at it saying, well, this is illogical. If we're evolving into new family forms, shouldn't somebody just do a study and see how children in like what we call open marriages. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one, but this is where you basically have a mom and a dad, but they just kind of get new partners and they all just kind of live together. Should we just see how people who are into that kind of a non-traditional society fare? Shouldn't we just do a study? Does it damage the children? Okay, doesn't that seem scientific? Okay, well what's going to be the problem with that study though?
No one's gonna
It's
want you
gonna
to
be
do
by
that.
a biased person,
Well-
probably.
Well, they won't like the results.
The results are going to
Even-
go against the public school and everyone. I mean, it's going to throw down the.
Okay, well, even deeper, think about this. Who's going to define what a successful child is? So, if you think that certain behaviors that I would call to be wrong behaviors, if you thought they were really evolving to be higher level behaviors, then you would not say that this person has a problem. So maybe you expect, I mean you guys probably, I'm sure you guys in this generation probably are tired of everybody painting teenagers as rebellious. How many of you get tired of that? You know, like everybody just acts like every teenager in America is rebellious. Okay? Now, maybe you are rebellious. I don't know. No, I know you're not rebellious. Now, everybody has to wrestle with the issue of whether they're going to submit to an authority in their life, and it's a temptation that we have. It's a temptation. But, you know, I know you guys. You're good. You're law-abiding citizens, you know. I mean, you're going to follow the rules. You're going to push it a little just to see what you can do, okay? But I know you guys. Now, but what if you had a belief system that breaking all rules is good? Okay? You want, because see, I thought you could just prove to people these kinds of alternative life structures, like having a gay couple adopt a child, and so we're all saying, well, see, that child might turn out gay. So I can do a study that shows, yes, it'll increase the risk of homosexuality. Now, why is that study not going to go anywhere?
To them,
Because that's not bad.
Because it's not bad. They're evolving to a higher place. Now, here's where it starts to get a little crazy, though, because obviously homosexuality is going to have a problem with reproduction. So there's certain other belief systems that will have to come in here. So there's other strong belief systems in here. Are we done here? Is my watch off? I think my watch is...
1:55.
Oh, I'm late. Okay, well, we're going to have to take it up there. Because then we're going to have to go down here next time. We have to go through this one down to liberalism and interventionism. So we're going to have to take this up next time. Because this is a big one we'll need to understand. So, help us, Lord, to see and know this. See you next week. Okay.